Greetings again everyone, and it's finally here, Sigma's first ever official Canon RF mount lens, one of a number hitting the shelves right about now, their popular little 18 to 50mm f2.8. Okay, it's not a full frame lens, it only offers a smaller aps-c image circle for Canon's aps-c RF mount mirrorless cameras like the R100, R50, R10 and R7. Still, I'll take that any day, and so will thousands of Canon's aps-c camera owners who have been absolutely starved of autofocus lens options for the past 2 years. What have Canon been thinking all this time, banning third-party lenses? Anyway, something's finally been worked out or whatever, and now everyone finally gets to benefit. The only zoom lenses for Canon's aps-c RF mount mirrorless cameras at the moment are the little zoomable kit lenses of just average quality. Well, this general purpose zoom lens offers something far more exciting, a constant maximum aperture of f2.8, over twice as bright as those kit lenses at the wide angle end and over 4 times brighter when you're zoomed in. This means much faster shutter speeds for you and much more out of focus backgrounds. This lens could open up the world of portrait or subject photography for you. This is the reason why you bought an aps-c camera in the first place instead of some little compact thing. The lens will cost £479 here in the UK or $599 US, quite reasonable for a new fast standard zoom lens, and I'd like to thank Sigma UK very much for loaning me this lens for a week or so for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. And this is going to be a far shorter review than usual because I've already fully tested this lens on Sony E-mount. In fact, a lot of the sample pictures, but obviously not the test pictures that you're about to see, come from the Sony version of this lens. So if you want to know all about this lens's distortion, work against bright lights, vignetting, longitudinal chromatic aberration, well, all those things will be the same. I did a quick check for you. So there's a link in the description below to check out a deeper review if you want. What I want to focus on today, no pun intended, is how well the lens works electronically with my R7 camera to check that autofocus and everything else is still fine, and I also want to check the lens's sharpness on the R7's demanding 32 megapixel sensor. Remember, aside from being a higher resolution than Sony's aps-c cameras, the Canon sensor itself is a slightly different size, a little smaller than other companies' cropped sensors, so that might have a slight positive effect on corner image quality, perhaps cropping out the worst of any corner softness. Well, we'll see in a minute. Canon's 1.6 times crop instead of 1.5 times also means that this lens won't offer quite the same wide angle as on other systems when you're zoomed out. It's the full frame equivalent of about 29 to 80mm. Still useful, but you might want to consider pairing this thing up with an ultra wide angle zoom lens to cover all your bases. The lens's build quality is the same as the Sony and Fuji versions, except obviously with a much larger Canon RF mount at the rear. Still, its small size is a real advantage. If you'd wanted to use a fast standard zoom lens on your EOS R7 camera before this Sigma lens came about, then here was the gigantic official Canon option, still on sale today with an EF to RF mount adapter for extra bulkiness. So the size of this Sigma lens is actually quite revolutionary considering its bright maximum aperture. It also has a weather sealing gasket around the metallic rear mount. There's no aperture ring on this lens, but you do get a zoom ring, which turns incredibly smoothly with just the right amount of damping, as well as an electronically coupled focus ring, all of which make this useful for video work. The lens's autofocus motor worked perfectly on Canon, silently, accurately, and lightning fast. The lens had no trouble in subject tracking either, as you can see. I also tested the R7's in-body image stabilization and in-camera image corrections. Everything worked perfectly, just like it would on an official Canon lens, which is awesome. All in all, absolutely no problems here with build quality or electronic functionality. So let's see about image quality. I have fixed it onto my Canon EOS R7 here, whose 32 megapixel aps-c sensor is one of the most demanding on the market today. As I mentioned before, in-camera corrections work with this lens and were left on for this test. At 18mm and f2.8, we are seeing excellent image quality right away in the middle. Corner image quality at the brightest aperture is very soft though. At f4, there's no difference. At f5.6, a small improvement. At f8, we finally get a usable image in the corners. Stop down to f11 though, and diffraction just means the image is getting softer from this point. A rocky start perhaps, but let's zoom in now to 30mm. At f2.8, picture quality is okay in the middle, just averagely sharp here. But the very good news is that there are no issues at all in the image corners now. They look just as good, which is very encouraging. Stop down to f4 and sharpness improves, and at f5.6 sharpness is excellent from the corners and back into the middle of the image. Nice. Stop down to f8 or f11 though, and the image starts getting softer due to diffraction again. Remember, its effects kick in earlier at the aperture range on such a high resolution camera. Finally, let's zoom all the way into 50mm. At f2.8, image quality is slightly soft in the middle, but still quite usable. Again though, thankfully, corner image quality is no worse. Once again though, f4 and f5.6 looks nice and sharp from the corners and back into the middle of the image. Okay, well, it's clear that the R7's demanding 32MP sensor is a really tough playing field for the little Sigma 18-50. The biggest issue is its soft corner image quality at the widest angles. Zoom in a bit and the corners become fine, but you'll always want to stop down to f4 or f5.6 for best results. However, I will say here that the lens is easily sharp enough for 4K video work, and its image quality will be absolutely fine on a 24MP sensor, which are in the majority of Canon's aps-c mirrorless cameras at the time of writing. As I mentioned before, everything else optically about this lens is the same as on the Fuji and Sony versions. Distortion, vignetting, flaring, all the same, all relatively under control, although the lens still displays some hefty longitudinal chromatic aberration. Overall, while it's not the sharpest lens in the world at f2.8 on a 32MP camera, it does sharpen up nicely when its aperture is topped down, and everything else about the way the lens works is pretty nifty, and I'm still very fond of this lens simply due to that bright maximum aperture, incredibly useful in a revolutionarily small lens body, and all at a reasonable price. It's going to be of interest to video makers too, so considering its value proposition, it does still come recommended, and it's probably a good choice for Sigma's first RF mount lens, as I have little doubt that it's going to sell pretty well for them. Did you enjoy that video? Well, you weren't really supposed to, it's more of an avant-garde piece really, but if that's your kind of thing anyway, then check out my channel for about 800 more camera lens reviews, all neatly ordered into handy playlists, and if you really appreciate these videos, then check out my Patreon page down in the description for more ways to support this channel and get a whole load of exclusive bonus content too. Ciao for now, everyone.